Janelle Moore clutched her son tighter, his tiny fists balled against her chest, his wails echoing off the sterile break-room walls. It was barely 9 a.m. on a Monday, but already the fluorescent lights above seemed too harsh, too exposing. Her eyes burned from a night with little sleep. Micah had been teething, and the sting of embarrassment now layered on top of exhaustion. She hadn't planned for this. The daycare had called just after 6 a.m. water main break, closed until further notice. She'd cycled through her contacts, desperate for help, but no one could watch him. Her mother was out of town. Her sister was working a double. She couldn't afford to miss another day. So she made the only choice she could: bundle him up, pack his bottles, and pray for quiet. She'd slipped into the office unnoticed, laying Micah in his carrier beside her desk, hoping the gentle sway of the rocking seat and the soft hum of the white noise app would buy her time. Some co-workers looked away, others smiled tight-lipped and scurried past. Amanda, the team lead, had hovered nearby, her phone angled suspiciously low. Janelle caught the glint of the camera lens but said nothing. She had bigger things to worry about. Now, under the cold glare of Mr. Dalton, those worries bloomed into something worse. The managing partner's tall frame filled the doorway, his voice slicing through the room like a blade. "This is not a daycare," he barked, gesturing toward Micah with visible disgust. Janelle stood frozen, Micah now sobbing harder, his cries rising in pitch as if protesting the injustice for her. "Please," she started, her voice shaking. "I didn't have any help today. I just needed—" But he raised a hand, cutting her off mid-sentence, eyes narrowing with impatience. "You're done. Clear your desk." Just like that. No conversation, no compassion. The room seemed to shrink around her, the dull hum of the vending machine growing louder as if mocking her, her breath caught in her throat, her heart thudding against Micah's as she backed toward the hallway, co-workers pretending not to stare. Shame burned in her chest, but beneath it, something else began to smolder, something harder, sharper. As the office door closed behind her with a soft click, she pressed her lips to Micah's head and whispered, "Please don't do this." But the sound of her son's crying filled the silence. Then everything faded to black, a beat, and then the voiceover cut through the dark like a spark. But the next morning, everything changed. Janelle Moore had always known how to survive. Raised in Decatur by her grandmother after her mother passed and her father disappeared into silence, she learned early that stability was something you earned, not something given. Her grandmother, Miss Evelyn, ran a tight Shipperley mornings church on Sundays, and no excuses when it came to school. Janelle took it all in, the quiet resilience, the fierce pride, the belief that you did what you had to, no matter how hard. That mindset carried her through college, where she worked part-time jobs while grinding through business classes at Georgia State. She was never the loudest in the room, but she was often the last to leave it. 3 years ago, she finally saw the payoff, a full-time position at a respected mid-sized accounting firm in downtown Atlanta. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady. It was security. It was the closest thing to peace she'd known. Then came Trey. He swept into her life like summer rain, charming, magnetic, a smile that could short-circuit common sense. For the first time in a long while, Janelle let herself believe in more than just survival. They moved in together quickly, talked about starting a family. When she found out she was pregnant, Trey swore he was ready, swore he'd be there every step of the way. But promises are easy to make and easier to break. 2 weeks after Micah was born, Trey vanished with barely a text. "I'm not built for this," he wrote. Janelle didn't waste time crying over it. She had diapers to change, bottles to warm, and a colicky newborn who needed her more than she needed explanations. She filed for child support that never came, texted Trey photos that went unanswered, and eventually stopped expecting anything at all. Every day since had been a balancing act on a fraying tightrope. She returned to work just 8 weeks postpartum, her body still aching, her mind still reeling. There were no maternity rooms in the office, so she pumped in the dim storage closet between client calls, praying no one would walk in. She never missed a deadline. She logged hours from home after Micah fell asleep in her arms. She showed up early and stayed late, her laptop open on the kitchen table well past midnight. Her co-workers smiled politely, but none of them really saw her, not the real her. The one who sometimes cried in the car before walking into the office. The one who rationed formula at the end of the month, who skipped lunch so Micah could eat better. And Amanda, the team lead, always seemed to see her most clearly when there was an opportunity to undermine her. Janelle's work ethic didn't go unnoticed, and Amanda hated that, so she smiled with tight lips and waited to pounce. Mr. Dalton never made space for people like Janelle. He was old school, sharp-suited, all business. No room for personal distractions, as he liked to say in staff meetings. Still, Janelle kept her head down and outworked everyone around her. Her job wasn't just a paycheck, it was her last anchor, her proof that she could hold it all together. Until today. Until the daycare cancelled and every backup plan fell through. Until she carried Micah into the office, just praying for one quiet day. Until Amanda snapped that photo. Until Mr. Dalton humiliated her in front of the break room's humming refrigerator and fake hospitality. Now, the apartment was still. Micah slept in his crib with a soft whimper, thumb tucked in his mouth. Janelle sat on the edge of the couch, her hands trembling. The TV played some late-night infomercial, forgotten in the background. She stared at her phone. Bank app open. Rent was due in 5 days. No backup, no safety net. She bit her lip until it bled, pressing the pain into her skin as if it might hold back the tide. But it didn't. The tears came fast and quiet, her body folding forward as sobs shook her shoulders. She buried her face in her hands, every ounce of control she'd clung to finally breaking. For the first time in a long time, she let herself feel how close the edge was, how hard it was to keep pretending she was okay. There was no plan B this time, no one coming to rescue her. She was alone. But even in that moment, shattered, exhausted, broke, there was still something in her that refused to be extinguished, because Janelle Moore had always known how to survive. Now, she would have to learn how to fight. The buzzing woke her before the sun did. At first, Janelle thought it was Micah. Maybe he needed a bottle or had kicked off his blanket again. But the room was still dark, quiet except for the faint whir of the ceiling fan and Micah's gentle breathing from the bassinet beside her bed. Then the buzzing came again, louder this time, insistent. Her phone. She reached for it, groggy, expecting maybe a missed call or a scam text, maybe even a daycare update. But instead, the screen was lit up with notifications, then hundreds, scrolling by so fast she couldn't read them all. Her thumb fumbled, unlocking the screen. Instagram tags, Twitter mentions, texts from unknown numbers. She sat up straighter, heart racing, just as the phone began ringing in her hand. Cassie. She mumbled when she saw the name. It's 6:30. Cassie didn't wait for pleasantries. Girl, you're going viral. What? Viral? Like internet viral? You haven't seen it. Oh my God. Check Twitter. Check Instagram. Everyone's talking about you. Still half asleep, Janelle rubbed her face with one hand and tapped through the mess of notifications with the other. It didn't take long to find it. There it was, Amanda's photo. Janelle, in the break room, Micah clutched to her chest, his face red from crying, her own face streaked with tears and exhaustion. The caption above the image, written in Amanda's unmistakable tone, dripped with judgment. This is what's wrong with corporate culture today. Bringing your baby to work like it's a playground. Unprofessional, disruptive, embarrassing. Janelle's stomach twisted. Oh my God. Keep reading, Cassie said quickly, her voice alive with urgency. She did. The original post had barely a few dozen likes, but the comments were already in the thousands, most of them not in Amanda's favor. Someone had screenshotted the image, blurred Micah's face, and reposted it with a sharply different tone. This woman should be protected, not punished. Another user reposted it with hashtag #LetMumsWork. A verified parenting blogger with nearly 1 million followers had commented, "Every working mother has been here. Shame on the employer. Where's the humanity?" Comment after comment poured in. People from all over the country, mothers, fathers, workers, even executives expressing their outrage. She should have been supported, not fired. Corporate America has no empathy. Where can we donate to help her? Janelle stared at the screen, her heart pounding. This couldn't be real. I didn't ask for this, she whispered. I know, Cassie said gently, but it found you. Now, what are you gonna do? I don't know. I didn't want any of this. I just needed one day of grace. Cassie exhaled. Janelle, this is your moment. Use your voice. Tell your side. People want to hear from you, not Amanda, not some angry commenters. You deserve that. I'm not an influencer, Cassie. I don't know how to do any of this. I just wanted to work and raise my kid. Exactly, Cassie said. That's why people care. Because you're real. You're all of us. Just speak from the heart. Don't let other people tell your story. The rest of the day was a blur. Her phone rang non-stop. A reporter from a local news station left a voicemail asking for an interview. A parenting podcast DM'd her. Someone claiming to be from Good Morning America emailed, asking if she'd be open to a conversation. She turned everything off for a while. Micah needed changing, then feeding. She sat on the edge of the couch, trying to center herself, while cartoons played in the background and her mind swirled. She thought about her grandmother, who used to say, "Speak when you're ready, baby, but don't let anyone speak over you." And she thought about Micah, too young to understand any of this, his entire future resting in her hands. That evening, after she rocked Micah to sleep and laid him down gently in the crib, she opened her Instagram account. Her fingers hovered above the keyboard, uncertain. Then, without overthinking it, she started typing. She wrote about how she'd grown up in Decatur, raised by a grandmother who worked 2 jobs and still made time to teach her how to pray and how to keep going. She wrote about earning her degree while holding down 3 part-time jobs, about how proud she'd been to land the job at the firm, how hard she'd worked to prove herself every single day. She wrote about Micah, about how Trey had left 2 weeks after he was born, about the night feeds, the cracked hands, the long hours logged in the dark with one hand on a keyboard and the other cradling a baby. She wrote about how she never asked for handouts, never complained, how even when she was pumping breast milk in a dusty supply closet, she still hit every deadline. How Amanda's photo wasn't just cruel, it was dishonest. It erased the context. It erased her. Then she wrote the truth. I didn't want to be a story. I just wanted a chance. A little grace. A little humanity. I brought my son to work that day because I had no other choice, and I was fired for it. She ended it simply. I'm not asking for pity. I'm asking for a world where mothers aren't punished for trying to hold it all together. She posted the message with a photo, not the one Amanda took, but one she had taken herself the week Micah turned 5 months old, her sitting at her desk at home, smiling gently with Micah sleeping on her chest. Real life, no filter. She put the phone down, then sat in silence, unsure what would happen. Part of her expected silence, maybe a few friends responding, maybe some well-meaning strangers, but within the hour, the post had gone viral. 30 comments turned into 300, then 3,000. Women from all over the world were sharing their own stories of being forced out of jobs while pregnant, of hiding breast pumps under their desks, of suffering in silence. Some tagged their employers, some tagged lawmakers. Celebrities began resharing her post. The parenting blogger updated their original post to include Janelle's caption, tagging it again with #LetMumsWork. People began asking how they could help, offering everything from groceries and Venmo donations to job leads at companies that actually had parental leave policies. She sat there on her couch in the soft glow of the living room light, watching the numbers rise, followers, comments, shares, and felt a strange mixture of awe and fear. Her hands trembled. She wasn't used to being seen like this, to being heard. All she had wanted was a quiet life, a steady job, a roof over her son's head. But now the world had cracked open, and her story was out there in the dark. Micah stirred, and Janelle moved to comfort him, lifting him gently, holding him close. He nestled into her shoulder with a sigh. She looked down at her phone again, and this time she didn't panic. She didn't flinch. She pressed the screen to black, holding her son with both arms, the weight of him solid and real. For the first time in what felt like forever, she felt something close to hope, not because she was trending, not because people were finally listening, but because she had spoken and the world had answered. And somewhere deep inside her, beneath the exhaustion, beneath the heartbreaks, something fierce began to grow. Not survival, not even resilience. The days that followed felt like a dream. Janelle couldn't wake from. Her phone buzzed, constantly texts, DMIs, emails. Strangers sent messages of love, encouragement, and stories that mirrored her own. Single mothers, working parents, even retired HR professionals who admitted they'd once enforced policies they no longer believed in. Job offers began trickling in. Some seemed sincere, but many felt off. One startup offered her a vague brand ambassador role that included social media posting and showing up to panels. Another company, a corporate giant that had recently been slammed for poor maternity leave policies, offered her a 6-month contract with no benefits. It would be a great PR alignment, the recruiter had said, too brightly. Janelle felt like a symbol, not a person. Like everyone wanted to stand next to her, but no one wanted to actually know her. Then the news requests came. Local outlets first, then national ones. She ignored them at first. Who was she to speak on TV? What if she cried? What if she said the wrong thing? But Cassie reminded her gently, "You already said the right thing. Just be yourself again." So Janelle agreed to one interview with a local Atlanta news station. Her heart pounded as she sat beneath the studio lights, makeup caked under her eyes, the anchor asking her gently, "What do you hope comes from all of this?" She looked into the camera and said, simply, "I just want to be seen. I want people like me to stop being invisible." The clip aired that night, and the segment trended online by morning. Then Mr. Dalton issued a statement. It arrived in a crisp PDF to several media outlets. Posted coldly on the firm's website. "Our firm supports working families, but we must also maintain professionalism in the workplace. Employees are expected to follow established policies, and any deviation must be addressed accordingly. No apology, no acknowledgement of her circumstances, just polished indifference." It only made things worse. The online backlash intensified. Janelle's story had gone from touching to enraging. People weren't just sad for her anymore, they were furious at them. That's when the email from Greer and Tate arrived. The subject line read, "Ree, your story deserves justice." It was clean, respectful, and startling. She almost didn't open it, but curiosity pulled her in. The message was brief, compassionate, but not pushy. "We believe what happened to you may constitute wrongful termination and workplace discrimination. If you'd like to discuss your rights, we're here." She waited 2 days before replying, not because she didn't want justice, but because she was afraid of what it might cost. She wasn't the kind of person who sued companies. She didn't want to be seen as chasing money or attention or vengeance. But more than that, a deeper fear gnawed at her. What if she wasn't enough to take this fight on? What if she failed? When she met Maya Greer, all those questions seemed to settle. Maya was sharp, composed, a black woman in her 40s with the kind of quiet strength that made people sit up straighter. Her office was warm, full of books and photos of her family. She offered Janelle water, then sat across from her and didn't speak until Janelle was ready. When Janelle finally voiced her fears about being labeled angry, ungrateful, difficult, Maya nodded solemnly and said, "They made you feel disposable. Let's show them you're not." So Janelle said yes. She agreed to file the suit. The moment the news broke, everything escalated. Greer and Tate handled the media requests and legal firewalls, but Janelle could feel the tension climbing. Anonymous accounts began posting cruel remarks online. "She just wants a payout." "Another entitled mum who can't separate work and home." Then Amanda struck again. Leaked emails, selectively cropped screenshots of Janelle missing a deadline. Never mind, it was the week after. Micah had RSV and she'd been working from the ER. Amanda even shared a vague statement implying Janelle had been reprimanded more than once for lateness and distractions. None of it told the whole truth, but the seeds of doubt were enough to rattle Janelle's already fragile confidence. She spiraled. The nights grew heavier. Micah still needed her full time, and now her days were filled with legal consultations and anxiety. The guilt crept in like fog. What if this wasn't worth it? What if she'd made everything worse? The shame felt bone deep. She had never asked for help, and now the world was watching her stumble. In her lowest moment, she remembered Trey's voice, cutting and final, the night he left. "You're not strong enough to do this alone." That line haunted her. Some days she still believed it, but Maya didn't. After another round of Amanda's leaks made the gossip rounds on social media, Janelle called her in tears. "Maybe I should just drop this," she said. "Maybe it's too much." Maya didn't flinch. "You've already been doing the impossible," she replied calmly. "You've raised a child alone. You've worked without support. You've carried the weight of silence. This lawsuit, this is just speaking the truth, and the truth is on your side." It was. The next morning that Micah said his first word, Janelle had been pouring a little formula into a bottle, wearing one of Trey's old college sweatshirts, hair tied up in a messy bun, the bags under her eyes darker than ever. Micah was bouncing in his seat, babbling like usual. Then he paused, stared up at her with his wide brown eyes, and said, clear as a bell, "Mama." Just like that. The sound hit her like a punch to the chest. She dropped the bottle, her hands flying to her mouth. "Say it again," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Mama," he giggled. Said it again like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Janelle sank to the floor, scooping him into her arms. She cried, big body shaking, sobs right there on the linoleum kitchen floor, holding her son while he touched her cheeks with his sticky fingers. "I just want to be enough for him," she whispered, rocking him. "That's all, just enough." And in that moment, with the storm still raging around her, she felt something shift. She might be scared, she might be tired, but she wasn't powerless. Not anymore, because her son had spoken, and he had named her. Not broken, not struggling, not difficult. Mama, and that, to Janelle, meant everything. The courtroom buzzed with quiet tension as Janelle stepped inside, clutching a small notebook in one hand and smoothing her blazer with the other. Her heart thudded in her chest, but her steps were steady. Beside her, Maya exuded calm, her presence like an anchor in a storm. Across the room, Mr. Dalton sat with a faint, smug smile, his arms crossed like he'd already won. Amanda perched stiffly beside him, her expression unreadable but her eyes flickering with something like nerves. The courtroom wasn't grand, just a county building with scuffed floors and beige walls. But to Janelle, it might as well have been the center of the world. This was where her truth would be heard or dismissed. Maya stood to make the opening statement. Her voice was firm, low, and deliberate. This case is about more than a job. It's about dignity, about respect, about a woman who refused to disappear, who was forced out not because of poor performance, but because she was a mother, because she brought her infant to work when left with no other choice, because she dared to be human in a place that expected her not to be. The judge listened, nodding slightly. Janelle kept her eyes on the floor, swallowing the wave of emotion that threatened to rise. Then Amanda was called to the stand. She adjusted her blazer, walked with forced confidence, and sat down with her chin slightly raised. At first, she kept her story simple. Policy had been violated. Disruptions occurred. Professionalism was compromised. But Maya's cross-examination was surgical. She moved slowly, methodically, laying groundwork before revealing the cracks. And then, just as Amanda began to sound self-righteous, Maya pulled up a digital exhibit on the screen. The courtroom. Lights dimmed slightly as the screen flickered to life. The words were unmistakable. A Slack message from Amanda to another colleague. If she's gone, I'll finally get the promotion. I'm tired of playing second to her supermom act. A gasp rippled through the courtroom. Amanda blanched. That's not what I meant, she started. But Maya cut in. You said it, didn't you? Amanda stammered. Yes, but it was taken out of context. Maya raised an eyebrow. What's the context for mocking a mother trying to feed her child? Amanda couldn't answer. The damage was done. Then came the twist no one saw coming. The courtroom doors opened quietly. A woman stepped inside, her posture hesitant but her face resolved. She walked past the rows of onlookers, stopped beside Maya, and whispered something in her ear. Maya's eyebrows lifted. She turned to the judge. Your Honor, with permission, we have a surprise witness who has just come forward. Her name is Susan Reyes, a former employee of the defendant's firm. There was a pause. Mr. Dalton's mouth tightened. The judge glanced at the defense team, who looked momentarily stunned, then gave a nod. She may testify. Susan took the stand, her hands trembling slightly as she was sworn in. She looked at Janelle, and for a moment, they simply locked eyes, two women who had never met but shared the same story. Then Susan spoke, voice soft but steady. 2 years ago, I was a junior accountant at the same firm. I got pregnant. I told HR early, tried to plan ahead, but a month after returning from maternity leave, I was put on a performance review and let go by the end of the quarter. They said it was about metrics, but nothing in my file backed that up. I didn't fight it then. I was too tired, too scared. But when I saw Janelle's story, I couldn't stay quiet. The courtroom was utterly still. The judge leaned forward slightly, visibly affected. Janelle sat frozen, her heart swelling with something close to heartbreak and relief all at once. Susan's words landed like stones in water impossible to ignore, rippling outward. Another name, another story, a pattern. The defense team scrambled. Mr. Dalton whispered urgently to his attorney, who nodded and requested a brief recess. As they huddled in the corner, Maya sat back calmly, her eyes fixed on Janelle. After a few minutes, the judge called everyone back. Mr. Dalton's lawyer stood. Your Honor, we'd like to discuss the possibility of a settlement. Maya turned to Janelle, her voice barely above a whisper. It's your choice. We can end it here quietly, or we go all the way. Make it public. Make it permanent. Janelle didn't answer right away. She looked at Dalton across the room, still stiff, still stubborn, but now sweating slightly. She thought of Micah, of Susan, of every whispered thank you from women online who'd messaged her in secret. She drew a breath. Her voice, when it came, was quiet but unshakable. We go all the way. Weeks later, a summer rain tapped gently against the windows of her apartment. Janelle sat at the same kitchen table where she'd once cried in silence, now surrounded by a very different kind of quiet peace. The court had ruled decisively in her favor. The judge's voice still echoed in her mind. This case reflects a failure not of individual character, but of systemic neglect. The firm was fined, ordered to compensate Janelle for wrongful termination and emotional distress, and most significantly, required to update its parental support policies. Mr. Dalton had been retired early. The press release phrased it carefully, but everyone knew the truth. Amanda had since gone silent, and the firm issued a public apology that circulated widely. Hollow as it may have been, it marked a shift. But for Janelle, the real victory wasn't just the ruling, it was what came next. Women began to come forward quietly at first, then louder. Emails, messages, even handwritten letters reached her. Stories poured in from women who had faced the same cold doors, the same whispered judgments, the same impossible choices between motherhood and survival. Inspired by Susan's courage and her own long, painful journey, Janelle launched Working While Mum, a modest blog that grew faster than she expected. What began as a few posts about her experience turned into a resource hub filled with legal guidance, emotional support, and guest stories. With Maya's help, she included free legal templates for filing workplace grievances and partnered with a network of pro bono attorneys. She wasn't just healing, she was helping others heal. 2. Work found her again in a form she could finally embrace. A remote financial consulting position at a women-led startup that valued flexibility, inclusion, and transparency. It paid well enough to cover her rent, build some savings, and for the first time in over a year, she could breathe without flinching. Her home was still small, 2 rooms, and Micah's crib tucked into the corner of her bedroom, but it felt different now, lighter, stronger. She'd earned this space not just by surviving, but by rising. One quiet evening, as golden dusk filtered in through the window blinds, Micah stood wobbling by the edge of the couch. Janelle turned just in time to see him take 3 unsteady steps toward her, her breath caught in her chest. "Micah," she gasped, joy bubbling out of her as she clapped her hands and dropped to her knees. He giggled, delighted by her reaction, and collapsed into her arms. She held him tight, tears brimming in her eyes. She kissed the top of his head, rocking him gently, her voice low and thick with emotion. "You won't remember any of this," she whispered, "but I hope you grow up knowing your mum never gave up. Not on you, not on herself." These days, Janelle walked differently. She held her head higher, not with arrogance, but with quiet pride. It wasn't the lawsuit or the media attention that changed her. It was the realization that her voice mattered, that her boundaries, her labor, her motherhood were not liabilities, but strengths. The world had tried to make her feel small, but she had stood, even when shaking. And now, as she watched her son's laughter fill their home, she knew she hadn't just fought for her job, she had fought for the right to exist. 1 month later, Janelle sat in a quiet recording studio, headphones on, mic in front of her, her voice steady but soft as she answered the final question of the podcast. The host's voice had been warm, thoughtful, and now she asked, "If you could go back to that day, the moment you were fired, what would you tell yourself?" Janelle closed her eyes for a second, the memory flickering back like a faded photograph. The sterile break room, Micah's cries, the weight of humiliation pressing into her chest. Then she smiled faintly, not bitter, but knowing. "I'd say, you're not just surviving, you're planting seeds." Her voice wavered slightly, but she kept going. "And one day, your son is going to grow up under a tree you built with your bare hands." The host fell silent for a moment, clearly moved, and then the episode wrapped quietly, the music fading in. Later that evening, the scene shifted to a park bathed in golden light. Janelle strolled slowly along a winding path, Micah's chubby fingers wrapped around hers as he toddled beside her, taking slow, careful steps. The trees above rustled gently, their branches filtering soft sunlight that danced across the grass. Birds called in the distance. A breeze moved through, warm and full of promise. Janelle glanced down at her son and smiled, her eyes full of quiet strength. In that moment, there was no courtroom, no headlines, no doubtingly this walk, this peace, this love. As they passed beneath a wide, leafy oak, the screen faded to black, and text appeared in simple white letters, dedicated to every woman who was told she had to choose. And just beneath it, the hashtag that had sparked a movement.